Titans, go!
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Titan Talk, the Titans podcast, and occasionally other podcasts. I'm your host, Charles Skaggs, back in Titans Tower, or, well, Doom Manor, I guess, technically still, and joined once again by my wonderful co-host and fellow assembling Avenger, DJ Nick. How are you doing, Nick?
Hey, Charles, I'm doing well. Well, hockey-wise, it could be doing better for both of us. The Lightning are in the lead when it comes to Blue Jackets, and the Flyers are in the lead when it comes to the Canadians. So hopefully we can tie up our series and just see what happens. Outside of that, coronavirus-wise, we recently got some news that all discotheques in Italy are officially closed. Ooh. Because people are getting a little bit lively and they're going to discotheques as it is the summer. So people like to dance the night away.
Yes.
And government came down and said, guys, there ain't no more dancing for the rest of the foreseeable future. So they closed down the discotheques because cases are on the rise. And so hopefully we're trying to stop the bleeding, as it were, before it gets too much.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. I wasn't aware that your cases were going back up. So
unfortunately, yeah. With people traveling because the summer, going on holiday and what have you within the country, is coming back. But it was predictable that there would be a second wave. But it's hopefully we're staunching the bleeding, as it were.
Well, we're still waiting to get over our first wave that we never got rid of because we didn't do it right. Fingers crossed, I guess. But
But on to more pleasant.
Yeah, I know. That takes us down this really dark hole, and I don't want to do that because we got a great Doom Patrol episode to talk about.
Indeed, we do. Or down a well, if you will.
Ooh, I see what you did there. Very nice, very nice. So yes, here at episode 58, we're going to be talking Dad Patrol. The 8th episode of Doom Patrol Season 2 was transmitted on the internet tubes on July 30th, 2020. Written by Tom Farrell, who wrote the previous episodes Pain Patrol and Flex Patrol, and also April Fitzsimmons, who wrote the previous episodes Time Patrol and Francis Patrol. And this was directed by Amanda Rao, who is new to Doom Patrol, so this is her first time directing. But I was noticing as I was going through the season lists, of writers and directors, the Doom Patrol has a lot of female directors. And
I love that.
Which makes sense because they have such strong female characters on this show. And so it's kind of great to see that kind of representation here. Especially, they definitely have the female writers, but they also have female directors, and I think that's fantastic.
Well, exactly. I mean, you mentioned this, and I love the fact that we're getting more women within the superhero world, writing, directing, etc. Because I think it all makes me think of, Patty Jenkins kind of led the way with Wonder Woman. And I'm not saying she blazed the trail, but I think she started something with that.
Yeah, I think the door was cracked open, but I think she pushed it open a little farther.
Indeed,
and
yes.
to let more female, or at least encourage studios to give women directors more of a shot. At least as far as, superhero type fare goes.
Yeah. And indeed, I actually hope that Patty Jenkins will get to see some of her directing on TV as well, because I really like her style of directing.
Yeah, and obviously both of us are waiting anxiously for Wonder Woman 1984.
Indeed we are.
Trying to get everybody to start taking care of themselves so we can go out to the theaters and, hey, maybe go see that. What an idea, right? But
outlandish.
I know, crazy. I'm a madman for thinking such things. What's wrong with me? So we get the return of Karen Obilom as Roni Evers, Samantha Marie Ware as Miranda, Mark Sheppard as Willoughby Kipling, Bethany Ann Lind as Clara Steele. We get the return of Pasay Pao as Slava, who we haven't seen since the season 1 episode Hair Patrol, where she and Niles got it on and made Dorothy in the process. And then we get the return of Sky Roberts as young Kay Chalice, David McDonald as the ever creepy daddy.
Yeah, hate that man.
Yeah, we've seen him before in the episodes Doom Patrol, Therapy Patrol, and Jane Patrol, and his face is still as punchable as ever, as far as I'm concerned.
Indeed it is. Him and Bob from Twin Peaks are probably drinking buddies.
Probably. Although I'd like to think that even Bob from Twin Peaks has better standards than to hang out with Daddy Chalice.
Could be. I guess even Bob has standards.
Yeah, even Bob would have, like, nope, that's too far for me. I may be evil incarnate, but that's going a bridge too far as I'm concerned. Not today, Daddy, not today. All right. So we have a lot of topics to talk about, but hopefully they won't take as long. So fingers crossed. But if you notice the structure of this episode, there's essentially 5 different storylines going on here in this episode. Yeah. Everybody's kind of all over the place. So topic number 1, we're going to talk Miranda, the Underground, and Daddy, if that's all right with everybody. So we start off the episode in 1954 Arkansas as we get to see Daddy, who's never been named yet, interestingly enough, hauling a young Kay Chalice out of their farmhouse as she begs him not to, clutching at her poor stuffed animal Harry, and he puts her in the edge of an old well, tells her that she knows what happens when she disobeys him, and tells her to get into the well's bucket. So right off the bat, Father of the Year, Daddy Chalice.
The Oscar goes to you, sir.
Yeah, exactly. The Oscar of shame. 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 So Kay is, of course, crying through all this, and we get to see her. She is sent down into the well. She ends up dropping poor Harry into the water below and tries to reach in and grab it, but Harry sinks below the water. It's because she doesn't know how deep it is, for one. And really tragic stuff. And we get to, then we get into the underground after that. So Nick, what was your reaction to seeing all this play out?
You know what, Charles? When it comes to these kind of scenes, I always find them incredibly uncomfortable. I don't know whether because I consider myself a very sensitive guy when it comes to these things, and I hate seeing kids mistreated in any kind of way. And this actually particularly hit me pretty hard, I think, and even more so on my rewatch, because I actually went to rewatch this episode in preparation for this review. And this man has no redeeming qualities whatsoever. He's just, and obviously, what I love about the fact is being Dad Patrol, we actually get, obviously various examples of fathers and how they relate to their children. And we start off with the most negative, example possible.
Yes.
And you think to yourself, yeah, this is definitely what you don't want to do. Budding fathers, this is not how you discipline your kids. You don't take them out back and pop them in a bucket. No, it just was very, very strong. I mean, the direction was incredible, and I felt it. And I think if you can feel it that much, it means that they've done their job splendidly. I mean, the music was very kind of toned down. It was all up almost to the 2 actors on screen. It was fantastic. It was fantastic in an incredibly disturbing way, I would say. Yeah,
I mean, you bring up a great point. That was something I was going to bring up if you didn't. That this episode definitely showcases a lot of the fathers in Doom Patrol. We like you said, we start off with the most horrible one in the form of Crazy Jane's father, and then we also talk about Cliff. We talk about Larry, the chief, and the only one we don't really get to see in this episode is Silas Stone.
No, which is interesting. Then.
Yeah, it is, because, that kind of would have carried the theme of this episode. But yeah, this is essentially the Doom Patrol version of Father's Day. Go ahead.
Very well said, because I was going to say this because it might seem odd, but it would be a perfect episode to sort of show people on Father's Day as an example. Granted, it's, you don't want to, the mistreating is probably not the best for Father's Day, but otherwise, I think it actually is a great showcase of that.
Yeah, it just shows, especially in the case of Jane's father, it shows how much his abuse affected her. And we understand, obviously, the sexual abuse that we were introduced to in season 1. But now here in this episode, we really get to see more of the psychological abuse and the trauma that she experienced. I mean, just the idea that it was bad enough this guy was molesting her, but he's also he's punishing her by sending her down a darkened well with only her teddy bear for company, and she ends up losing that. And so you can only imagine how messed up and how this horribly scarred her as a child.
Yes. But I think, the father deal has been a theme throughout the show in general. I mean, I believe I actually brought this up when we talked about last season. I think daddy issues is very much the key. Because we see, granted in the first season it was mainly Jane's father and the chief being father to everybody else. I mean, of course, we did get Larry a little bit as a dad. But it seems like daddy issues seems to be a thing. And I think it's interesting that we don't have many mother figures aside from
Rita's mother.
From Rita's mother. We don't really get any mother figures. I mean, we get Larry's...
Maybe that's season 3, that season 2 would be, an emphasis exploring the fathers of the Doom Patrol. Maybe we'll see more about the mothers in season 3.
Exactly. We could always get Mom Patrol, I suppose.
Mom Patrol, yeah, exactly. Well, I'm sure Cliff's mom would be very interesting to find out about.
For sure.
Yeah, and although we do see Dorothy's mom in this as well.
Yeah, true.
In this episode,
true.
So, but yeah, you kind of want to learn a little bit more, don't you? Yeah, I think so.
I certainly do. I'm curious.
Yeah, exactly. And I'd like to see more of Cyborg's mother, Eleanor.
Yeah.
Because, with obviously Vic's, still lingering grief over, the accident that took her life.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's worth exploring.
Definitely.
So, because we kind of see his relationship with his father because he's the one who survived, but obviously his mother didn't. So I think it would be interesting if Vic learned more about his mother.
Totally.
So, but, we're kind of digressing a little bit, but you get on that subject of mothers and fathers, I think it all kind of intertwines a bit.
Yeah, it does.
All right.
It does, and one can talk about that till the day is long.
Yes. Yeah, don't get me started on my parents. So just, we could be here for... How many weeks do you have? I'm just saying. Just asking. There's just one or two things there that I should probably be paying someone professionally to discuss. I'm just saying. All right. So more about, we learned a little bit more about Jane's past throughout later in the episode. We get another flashback where Daddy is accusing Kay of making eyes at a boy in church, but unknown to him, Kay's not around anymore. It's Miranda, and she tells her father this with obvious results. So what did you make of this scene?
Well, it makes you wonder, when did these personalities start manifesting within the household? Because granted, her father is probably an ignorant oaf who has no idea. He's like, oh, the girl's just crazy, or she's just playing around and just being stupid. So you think to yourself, how does somebody who maybe have no knowledge about, possible multiple personality disorder and what have you? Because I'm sure this guy has no idea. Because like I said, I think he's an incredibly ignorant person.
Yeah.
And so he's like, she's just being stupid. And
that's not to excuse his behavior.
Totally, no, of course, ignorance is not an excuse. Yes, I agree with you.
Exactly. So, but it's just another example of that his, like you said, his ignorance results in horrible treatment of his daughter, and obviously that affects her so much mentally, and obviously still has ramifications to this day. So, all right. Now we also get, the tale as we explore Miranda a little bit, we find out that she had apparently went down into the well, got Harry,
Yeah.
and left a note in down in the well, like a little secret compartment space in the well that she stored Harry in along with the note, and that comes out later. That
Yes.
So we get a little bit more there. We also get the underground. We get a little bit more of the underground where other alters, the other personas. We'll talk more about Jane in a little while, but Jane had to convince them that, or talk to them about like, well, hey, we've got two of the personalities, Scarlet Harlot and Lucy Fugue, are missing, and their stations have been closed. And Jane is convinced that there's no coincidence here. And Miranda shows up. Jane says that they were all fine until Miranda showed up. So she's essentially blaming Miranda. And then Miranda kind of flips it on her, says, well, hey, how are Baby Doll and Flaming Katie doing? And Jane has to admit, well, they died, but they didn't disappear. So I think she kind of deflects that a little bit.
She's very good at that.
And it's something we kind of come to understand toward the end of the episode, once we see that as Jane ends up going into the well. We'll talk more about Jane, but we kind of see that Miranda is obviously more than she appears, as we find out. So were you a little disappointed in that Miranda was something else?
I was going to say, because, last episode I kind of compared her to a flower child, if you will.
Yeah.
She has kind of become a flower child Manson style. So pretty much one of the members of the family who, of course, that happened during the flower power era.
Yeah.
So, of course, there was that embracing of that culture. I was like, yeah, she would fit right into the Manson family.
She's essentially the Once Upon a Time in Hollywood flower child.
Correct.
Yes.
I couldn't have put it better myself. That's exactly what she is, because she has that vibe about her, because she's all kind of peace and stuff. But at the same time, there is an agenda beneath that. And we see that she's kind of psychotic, maybe slightly, and that all's not well upstairs, as they say, when it comes to Miranda. I mean, because there's evidently something more at play. We do get, I guess, some of it here, but we don't really get, I guess, her end game, if you will. We don't really know why she's doing this exactly. I mean, it's her.
But she obviously reveals herself as more of a threat, though, especially to Jane.
Yeah, she seems more of a malignant presence than a beneficial presence, as it were. But the thing is, she's so charismatic that she has all the other personalities towing the line. Jane is the only outsider, the only rebel, if you will, when it comes to almost this totalitarian regime that Miranda has started in the underground. Because it made me feel a little bit like, the dictator, this despot, and everybody's kind of, bowing down to her, and Jane's the only one who's like refuses to kneel, if you will.
Well, and that's consistent because Jane is essentially this kind of punk rebel, the anti-authority, always contradictive, always standing up to authority figures, so it makes perfect sense that of all the personas, maybe her, especially in her role as right now the primary, confronted with, with Miranda, that she would be the only one that would maybe stand up, feel that she was in a position to stand up to Miranda and question her.
I actually had a question for you, Charles.
Okay.
I mean, where is Hammerhead in all this? Do you know?
We don't know. I mean, we kind of see her kind of just going along with everything, which is surprising because Hammerhead is kind of the hothead, and but maybe Hammerhead's busy trying to protect Kay right now.
Because she could be, I guess, somewhere else. Because you'd think that even Hammerhead herself, she seems to embrace Miranda's agenda as well. But you think, she's almost kind of yells a little bit at Jane when, Jane's like, I don't know what I'm doing and all this kind of thing. And Hammerhead's like, she'll lead the way, let Miranda lead the way. But yeah, I thought it was interesting that we didn't get any sort of comments from Hammerhead when it comes to, because she's usually very vocal.
Right, exactly. No, that's a good point. I hadn't considered that. So I think you're onto something. Maybe, I forget, did we see her in the finale? I can't remember.
No. I don't think so. I mean, last time we saw her, I believe, was after Baby Doll and Flaming Kitty were killed.
Yeah, she was angry about that. Maybe she's just hurt by that or whatever. I'm not sure.
Or she's at her station, maybe just kind of
Yeah.
sulking in her station. We don't know because I actually not see her.
That's a good question. Maybe she disappeared.
Boom, mystery.
Ooh, yeah. Just leave that hanging there. All right. Anything else about these characters before we move on?
No, I actually enjoyed it. And I love the fact that, as I said, that there is this, how could we say, like I said, this kind of dictatorship going on in the underground, and that everybody's kind of like sheep. It kind of reminds me of what's going on outside in the real world, Charles.
Yeah. Just a little bit, you think, maybe? Yeah.
Just a little.
Just a little bit.
But other than that, I really enjoyed it, yeah.
Good. Topic number 2. Let's talk about, of course, Cliff, who struggled really hard to get back to Dew Manor in last episode and was rewarded for once for his struggle because, hey, his daughter's there. So finally, Cliff gets a little love in the karma department, and he has another opportunity to try to patch things up with his daughter. And so he tries to make the most of it here in this episode. He shows her around Dew Manor. And, she's struggling to keep up with him because, hey, she's heavily pregnant. And she still has a few weeks to go, but so she feels like, well, it's, nothing urgent right now that she has to, be bedridden or anything. But she asks if Niles is still there, and Cliff tells her that he's not, and that he can't stand Niles because, hey, Niles threw him out of a spaceship not too long ago. Can't imagine why he'd be holding a grudge about that, but he's not going to let that affect their reunion. So what did you make of Cliff and Clara in this episode as they grew a little closer together in this one?
That I found myself smiling from ear to ear throughout the episode. I was like, you go, buddy, you deserve this. Because we talked about the fact that, Cliff had gone to daddy's school, as it were, with Dorothy, and he was ready to take this big step and become more of a father. And I love the scenes between him and his daughter because you can see he's just so giddy. Yeah. He almost seems more childlike than his own daughter. I mean, he's like kind of, he's very nervous. He has this kind of nervousness about him because, like, here's this and here is that, and, kind of excited.
Well, I think that there's anxiousness there because he's so desperate to repair that relationship.
Yeah, but no, definitely. But I think it's wonderful. It's so kind of endearing how nervous he is because you can see he's like, I've never seen Cliff so happy. I honestly haven't. And to the point to where...
Well, obviously it's kind of hard because, hey, his face doesn't make a grin. So you can never really tell because he's usually just dropping F-bombs every other word. So it's hard to tell when he's actually happy about something.
I mean, I think the only time I actually saw him happy or satisfied about something was when he was punching out rats. And I think that was pretty much where he was getting his joy from. And in fact, he even mentions, he's like, there's still some bad blood between me and the rats. I'm like, he's almost tripping over himself when he talks to his daughter because he mentions this kind of stuff. And it's like, I just thought it was so, so sweet. And I was so happy for Cliff. I mean, also, I love the fact that him and his daughter are so alike. It kind of reminded me a little bit of Heatwave and his daughter in Legends of Tomorrow because they kind of have that vibe going on.
That's a good comparison because Heatwave had to struggle to establish a relationship with his daughter as well. If you watch that show, and she eventually came around as well. So here I was really glad to see Cliff and Clara kind of bonding at long last. After that horrible incident where Cliff went down to Florida or whatever and showed up at her wedding shower or baby shower, now that here she is in Dew Manor, she seems like she's pretty rapidly come to terms with the fact that, oh hey, my dead father, who I thought was dead for so many years, is now actually 1, alive, and 2, a robot, and she seems to be accepted that at least a little bit. And, she's not running from him. She actively sought him out after his rather horrible answering machine message. Yeah. And So she's making the effort, is what I guess I'm trying to say here. And I was very happy to see that for Cliff's sake.
Well, I mean, also kudos to her for being so open-minded, I think. Granted, I think there's open-mindedness on both their parts, because when she comes out to Cliff about being a lesbian and about, marrying her girlfriend, Melissa, I like the fact that even Cliff, he doesn't seem to, it doesn't seem to faze him. He's like, oh, it's a girl, but then he just carries on. So I think he's also open-minded in his own right, and I love the fact that they openly accept each other for who they are. And I thought that was very sweet, because he could have maybe gone down the road of, I wonder why you like girls, and you should maybe try again with a guy or whatever. But I thought it was wonderful because they both have these, because homosexuality, granted, it has been more accepted in today's society, but there are still people who are very narrow-minded and old school and like, you can't, homosexuality is wrong, it's an illness and what have you, which is terrible to say.
Oh, yeah.
But Cliff is so open-minded in that sense, and I really appreciated that on his part as well.
Yeah, obviously with his upbringing, he could have very easily grown up the stereotypical white trash race car driver. And
exactly,
basically, like he could have gone full redneck, and he didn't. He, maybe because of his experience with his own body, or his interaction with the other Doom Patrol members, particularly Larry. Maybe just that experience has opened his mind up enough to that idea. So, considering he lives with a bandaged guy who has radioactive skin and can manifest a spirit that come out of his body, or a protoplasmic woman who can stretch or alter her shape, or a cyborg, or a woman with like 64 different personalities and each one having a superpower.
Yeah.
Maybe the idea of his daughter being a lesbian isn't that far-fetched in comparison. Maybe,
yeah,
it's like, that's all you got for me, really? Because that's not a big deal at all compared to everything else that he has to adjust to on a regular basis, I think.
It's like, okay, you're gay, and?
So what? Yes. Is there something else, I should know about, or,
But I just love that. Charles, what did you think of the relationship between Cliff and his daughter?
Well, I thought, I thought it was very charming. The fact that, even though she's a lesbian, she's pregnant, so obviously she must have been artificially inseminated, presumably. And her and her partner, her wife, are going to be having a baby together, and that's fantastic. Cliff is, and one of my favorite scenes in this episode is when Cliff finds out that he's going to be having a grandson. He's going to be having that he's going to be a grandfather to a boy, and he is so overjoyous about this. He is just, it's all he can do to keep from jumping up and down.
Oh yeah, he's just so excited about it. Yeah, I love that.
So it's just charming as all get out. And another thing that I loved was that thanks to that experience with Dorothy on the moon, I think he's finally started to figure out how to talk to his daughter. And he finally admits that he's stupid and he effed up and he's sorry. He expresses this to her. Something that he should have said from the get-go. And he would have been a lot better off.
Very true.
Than ranting and raving on top of a truck in front of his daughter's house during her baby shower. And so he's finally able to talk to her. He even cooks for her. He makes her pancakes. And
cooks a finger as well in the process.
Yeah. And he covers that up rather quickly, like don't pay attention to that.
No.
Yeah, but he does panic quite a bit during that moment. That was pretty funny.
He just pops it away, and it's like, no, nothing. Just had an extra finger there in your whatever he was cooking.
It's like, what's that smell? Smells like robber. I don't know. Car thief. It smells like car thief. Burning car thief.
I mean, he seems more worried about her obviously seeing the finger when it comes to that than him actually losing possibly the fact of having a finger ever again, because that finger is toast, literally.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like, like one of those, if you're barbecuing and you're cooking hot dogs on a barbecue grill and one kind of falls down into the flames and you reach, you hurry up to try to salvage it and bring it out and it's burned to a crisp, essentially like that. It's pretty funny. But yeah, it's great. At the end of the episode, we see her driving off after, he's very fatherly to her. He checks her truck and makes sure everything's good there. And, he tells her no matter how she screws up, she's going to do it with eyes wide open. Yeah. And I think you're right. I think that what's interesting is that even though she didn't grow up around her father, she's very much like her father in a lot of ways.
Yeah. I mean, they cuss the same. Unless his mom cussed just as much as Cliff does, because I was like, yep, she's your daughter. She's a steal. Because just happily going around F this and F that. I was like, yep, she's your daughter.
Exactly. And, as she's leaving, she calls him Dad. So that's a huge breakthrough and gives him a wedding invitation. So Cliff is just like over the moon by this point. And he's like, nothing's going to keep me away. Well, maybe something might.
Or will it?
Yeah, we'll talk about that next week. But
yeah, because I want to see.
But you knew as soon as he said that something was going to go sideways, right? He totally jinxed himself.
In fact, because I really wanted to see Cliff wearing a tux or something like that, but I don't know if he could ever fit into a tux like that. But
maybe it's still in the cards. Maybe for season 3, but here's hoping for Cliff's sake, because I think we do want to see Cliff in a wedding tux. I think that'd be hilarious.
Would be,
yeah. especially if she lets him give her away at the wedding. To walk her down the aisle.
Yeah, I mean, you can't do that in a leather jacket and a t-shirt. I'm sorry.
But knowing Cliff, of course, if he did walk her down the aisle, like his legs would freeze up or something, and he'd be like,
"Have this, have this,
Chief."
Oh my! Yes, Robot Man provides us with hours and hours of entertainment.
Pretty much. But that's what makes him so great, right? It makes him such a great character. All right. Anything else about Cliff and Clara?
No, I just and I love the fact that, as I said, that like you said, when she calls him Dad, he's like kind of yes, kind of thing. Because he's like, I can't believe she called me Dad. It's just, it's beautiful. It's just a beautiful relationship in such a very dark universe. It's nice to have these moments of tenderness.
Well, and especially this episode because with the whole thing with Jane's father and what's going on with Dorothy in this episode. I think they needed some humor to balance against this, and because just to offset some of that heaviness, that darkness, to keep you from feeling so depressed about this show, which is typically a fun show. So it's good to see that here, and finally getting, Cliff finally getting some happier moments, which was great.
I really think so because he's earned his
long deserved. Yes, yeah. As frustrating as it can be and limited of his thinking sometimes, you still want the best for him, I think. At least I do. I'm right there with you because, he made mistakes when he was, in his previous life, but I think he's making up for it and he is atoning for it. And he has come through with this journey of becoming a better person, and I think he deserves good things. Fine at last, I think. Yeah, I think we're all rooting for Cliff to be a better person. So it's kind of good to see that when it actually happens. I think.
Yeah, I just hope we will get that. They just won't get snatched away from him.
Well, it's not going to be that easy, I'm sure.
Yes, as we know, there's always that cursed monkey throwing a wrench into the works. So
yeah. Or Candlemaker, as it turns out. Topic number 3, let's talk about Larry, Jane, and Paul. We talked a little bit about Jane already, but for probably the first time, we get to really see Larry with Jane in this episode. And I thought that was something we should talk about, especially as we get some more flashbacks with Larry and his son Paul, and learn a little bit more about their relationship as well. So what did you make of Larry getting paired with Jane as Jane makes her quest to go back to the actual well on her family's farm where she was, so horribly traumatized repeatedly.
I thought it was maybe almost generous, as it were, on Jane's part to not go to Cliff, because usually it's Cliff and Jane who pair up and go on various adventures and go traipsing around the world. I thought maybe she was almost, this is the way I like to see it, is she's like, let him have some time with his daughter. I'm not going to burden him with my problems. I'll go to somebody else. And hence, she goes to Larry. And it was an interesting pair up, even though we know that Larry is like the Eeyore of the group. And so it's kind of like, it's raining again kind of thing. It's like, okay.
And it's Negative Man. He's got to live up to his name, right?
Yeah, no, definitely. That's why I would love to have seen like a stuffed Eeyore in his room, just as an extra thing.
Yes. They should get an Eeyore doll and they should bandage it up and put sunglasses on it.
I would love that as a Funko figure or as a plush toy. Yeah. I would get that immediately. But yeah, you mentioned the fact of
Negative
finally. I love that. I see, Funko. If you're listening, you've got a new product to get out there.
I just want Doom Patrol Funkos. Period.
Where are
they?
About time.
This is their second season. We still don't have Doom Patrol Funkos. What the F?
Yeah, and we have the most ridiculous Funkos, like 20 million version of Batman. Give us some Doom Patrol ones already.
Right.
But yes, that variance rant aside.
Yes. Sorry, it just happened. It just stuck in my head. Like, ooh, this is something that's been itching at the back of my skull for quite a while, and it just had to come out.
Trust me, Charles, you're not alone, because they have way too many variants of the same characters, and Funko should diversify a little bit more.
Just a little bit. I get they concentrate on what sells, but there's a bunch of Funkos that they do release that aren't going to appeal to hardly anybody. So if you're going to make those, why can't you make something that some people might actually buy? I don't know. I don't get it. I don't get their business model sometimes.
Since they've done so many different versions, so many different TV shows, you could do Doom Patrol, and it's so sellable.
Yeah. Now, if they just don't have the agreement, I understand that, but
could be they don't have the licensing.
Yeah,
agreement.
that's what I'm guessing. But I don't know. Just seems like a wasted opportunity to me. But that's just just me, I guess. So we get to, like I said, we get to see Jane with Larry, which I thought was great because we never get to see these two characters interact much. So it was interesting because when Jane shows up, Larry's kind of having some flashbacks about his son. He he's lying on his bed in his room and he sees this model rocket that his son made, and then he looks at the spirit that's glowing in his chest, and he's like, well, wondering if the spirit is the one who put the rocket there for him to see. And then he plays a tape recorder with him and Paul from like way back in the 60s before his accident.
Yeah. Well, if Walter Cronkite was a thing, it was definitely way back when.
Pretty much. So Walter Cronkite, very famous newsman on CBS from back in the day. He's the one who was essentially, if you look at the old moon landing footage of the news that was going on at the time, Cronkite is very heavily featured, very iconic. As he takes his glasses off during that whole moon landing, so it makes perfect sense to have him be that anchor here, and he's like in that spirit. Paul records with an interview with Larry, and pretending to be Walter Cronkite, so that makes sense, right? And they're talking about it. Well, the son asks him, well, what happens if you make a mistake? And Larry's just like, well, don't worry about that. Sensing his son's fear, like, my flight crew knows what they're doing. We won't make a mistake. Trying to reassure his son indirectly.
True. It's very, because
talks about math and numbers. They don't lie. That kind of thing.
Yeah. It's obviously then, hindsight is 20/20. It makes you wonder whether there's some underlying insecurity on Larry's part, that there might be something like, kid, I might be anxious about this. Please don't remind me, because I'm kind of anxious about it myself. And maybe he's trying to reassure himself about it. And obviously we know that it goes awry. But it could be that. I love that relationship because there Larry's actually being a great dad.
Yeah.
With
He's not being the dad that made fun of his son's model rocket and said it was imperfect, like it wasn't exactly perfect, that kind of thing.
He's actually being great with him. He's playing along with the whole Cronkite thing and even addressing him as like, well, Mr. Cronkite, kind of thing.
He's going along with it, yeah. And
he's buying into it.
And he
completely.
shows his son the stars, and it's a really great moment.
It's like, why weren't you a dad like this the whole time? But I guess, he had his own issues going on between his lover and, the wedding, the marriage with his wife not being idyllic. So,
because of his repressed sexuality. Yeah, exactly.
So there were other things at play. I actually wanted to go back, Charles, to what you mentioned about us seeing under the bandages for the first time, because I believe this is the first time we see under the bandages when it comes to Negative Man, or not.
I can't remember. I thought we'd seen them once in season 1, like right after, I think it was during the flashbacks maybe of Larry's accident.
Because I kept wondering to myself, will we during season 2? Because either it's my mind that's a blank. Because when he was
locked up in that lead-lined room, I think.
Right. No, because we always see it obviously with in the opening credits, we see kind of the skull under the bandages, as it were. And so I kept thinking to myself, have we ever seen Negative Man under the bandages? Because I was hoping to see this kind of ashen skull, if you will. Yeah. And it was, the makeup was cool. I liked it, but it seemed a bit weird, if you will, because I thought it would have been nice to kind of have more of a skeletal kind of thing, but it would have been probably hard for makeup to do. Were you happy with the makeup when it came to that stuff?
Well, I know that's one of the things that in the comics, they've kind of revealed that Negative Man essentially looks kind of like this glowing skeleton under the bandages. So, but I think the reason they did it this way was basically did it like more like a radioactive burn, with his melted skin. Loss of hair or whatnot. And I think the reason they did that was so that they could show Matt Bomer underneath.
Of course.
Because, and a credit to Matt Bomer, because let's face it, Matt Bomer is a really good looking guy.
He is, yeah.
And so when a really good looking guy is willing to make himself up so disfigured and whatnot, I got to give credit here because he's obviously committing to the role, And
like Charlize Theron in Monster.
Yeah, exactly. That's a perfect example. A stunning woman like Charlize Theron, made up to look like Eileen Wuornos. You never saw that coming. So, yeah. But it just shows, some actors are very, willing to go that extra mile for their part and their role. So I got to give credit to Bomer for this because. Not only is he doing the voice, he was willing to portray Larry disfigured, and we don't get to see that very often. So I appreciated that, and I think that's why they did it, so that he could let him act under that.
So in the comics, he's more like a Dr. Phosphorus, if you will, from kind of like Batman.
That's a good comparison. I think that's and it also depends on the artist too, but generally, because we don't really get to see Larry. Negative Man without his bandages often in the comics either.
Oh, okay.
So, especially like John Byrne, when he was doing some Doom Patrol stuff, kind of hinted at it. So.
Yeah, because when you talked to me about the skeleton, Dr. Phosphorus came to my mind immediately.
Yeah. So something similar to that. Yeah, just not on fire like Dr. Phosphorus. Yeah, exactly. Just the skeletal part, but pretty similar. Yeah. It's kind of, like almost like a Day of the Dead type, face.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
But yeah, so we get to see that. Jane shows up and she's basically tells him, look, sorry if you're busy talking to your spirit or what, but I got this thing in Arkansas. Do you want to come along? And no. She doesn't really ask him. She just more tells him.
Yeah, she's kind of like, get your stupid bandages on and we're going to Arkansas.
Yeah, that's it. And yeah, just like you're doing this, whether you want to or not, okay? Because probably she figured that Larry was going to protest, so she had to probably take a tougher hand with him, I think. Yeah. But
he's so beaten down, he'll probably take anything at this point.
Yeah, he's, like you said, he's Eeyore. He's, I'm trying to think of another example of just this downy like a Debbie Downer type personality.
Yeah.
So they go out to Arkansas. They can only go so far using Flit, because apparently Flit doesn't want to get anywhere near that farmhouse. Mm-hmm. So they essentially get in around the area, and then they have to drive there the rest of the way, or walk. I'm sorry.
Yeah, they're walking because, are we getting our steps in?
Yeah. So you kind of wonder, well, why didn't you just get steal a car or something to drive the rest of the way? But anyway, so they end up walking the whole way, or the rest of the way, and Jane talks about how scared she is, or because Kay lost something there. She insists she has to get it back. She doesn't tell Larry exactly what it is, but she's very insistent about it, and she feels like she needs to make herself useful, because if she doesn't, she kind of wonders if there's any need for her. So she's essentially, look, I got to do this to prove my worth, because otherwise, I may just fade away, and I don't want to fade away.
Yeah, because she's kind of seen, that apparently, the way Miranda is selling it is, that the little girl's doing house cleaning, mm-hmm. and these personalities gradually disappearing. And as they say, it's like in a company, nobody is indispensable. She's trying to make herself indispensable. You need me, you can't kick me out because I can do stuff. So it kind of gave me that idea of a big major company kind of firing people, and she's almost kind of scrambling to make sure she doesn't get fired, and show that she is needed within the company, as it were, that is the underground.
Yeah. So they get to the well, and Jane takes the cover off and tells Larry, look, okay, you're going to hold the rope while I go down in there. And still at this point, Larry has no idea what she's after, why she's doing this.
He must be very bewildered at this point.
Bewildered or just bored? I don't know, because it's he's not asking questions. You think he'd be asking more questions what is the deal? What are you after? But he's just
bored is.
I guess I'm doing this now. And
whatever.
Yeah, whatever. I'll just do what I'm told. So she goes down in there. She finds the note that Miranda left, and in the note, Miranda says that she's going to do everything in her power to make sure Kay is all right. She doesn't need anyone but the other personalities. So we see Miranda climbing up the bucket rope, and essentially we get to go back to the underground where Jane confronts Miranda, and they basically say that Jane realizes that Miranda was strong and feels like maybe she's, this is finally the point where Jane accepts that maybe Miranda should be the primary personality. So she gives Miranda Harry, the bear, to give to Kay, and she apologizes for ever doubting Miranda and says, okay, you're in charge, I'm okay with that. Miranda says, well, I'm glad we're finally on the same page, and then she throws Harry back into the well, and then shoves Jane in the well. So what did you make of that, that double turn, or that twist there? That wasn't really a twist.
Yeah, but I was like, whoa, dude, because, as you mentioned, Jane seems to suddenly have this admiration for Miranda, because she's like, you were the strong one. I respect you. I had this all wrong. You're a great person. You're a fighter for the little girl. And then this, and yeah, Miranda basically reveals her true colors. And you think to yourself, wow, I was just blown away. I was like, I did not see that coming.
Well, especially, because they went through so much to show Jane being resistant to Miranda and skeptical of her. And then finally, when she gets it, she finally gets won over. It's like, okay, I'm on board. And then, of course, that's the moment that Miranda betrays her.
Yeah. Well, and of course, there she plummets into the well, and she finds, and there, of course, are the corpses, if you will, of Baby Doll and a couple of the other personalities, if they are corpses, I don't know.
Right.
But yeah, I was just blown away, because I was like, so once again, the question is raised is, what is Miranda's end game? Does she see Jane as competition and is literally eliminating the competition?
I think so. I think so.
So you think it's Miranda eliminating the competition?
Yeah, I think Miranda is trying to reestablish herself as primary, doesn't need Jane around to be a potential threat or to challenge her authority.
And so that's why she's progressively doing away with the various personalities.
Or like maybe that's why she's doing that, to get rid of any potential threats. Like some of the stronger personalities she's getting rid of.
True. Unless she ends up with, because she wants to be primary in everything. And so I suppose she sees enemies everywhere. And it's like, I don't want you around, boom. And I was blown away. It was quite a twist. I mean, did you see this coming, Charles?
I was suspicious of, I didn't know exactly what was going to happen, but I had a feeling that something was going to happen, because just, the way Miranda has been introduced and her whole serenity, sense of serenity, that it just made me suspicious. And that coming from someone like Jane, that all of a sudden, especially after the explanation that we were given, that she threw herself into the well, and now all of a sudden she's back. There's no explanation of how she's back, for one. And so now we're just going to be like, oh, everybody's supposed to fall in line behind Miranda all of a sudden. Just maybe very skeptical.
It does raise a lot of questions, which I hope we'll have answers to.
Yeah, maybe a while before we get those answers, but for right now, anyway, we just have Jane floating around in the well, and
next to Baby Doll and a couple of others. I think Scarlet Harlot's in there.
Yeah, probably Flaming Katie, and so probably not flaming anymore. All right.
I think the flames burned out on that one.
Pretty much. Drenched Katie.
Drenched. There you go.
All right, let's move on. Topic number 4. This is a fun topic. Beekeeper and Borg. We had Steel and Stone. Getting it done. Steel and Stone troubles on the run. But in this one, and I really appreciated the nod to this one, we get a fun little sequence where we see Rita and Vic in the roles of John Steed and Emma Peel from the British version of the Avengers. And not Thor, Iron Man, Captain America, Black Widow, not any of those, not those Avengers. These are the British Avengers. These are the ones that came before the Marvel Comics Avengers. And maybe, if nothing else, the Uma Thurman and Ray Fiennes movie from the 90s that had Sean Connery as the bad guy and was not that great of a movie. Just put it that way.
No.
Yeah.
No, but folks, definitely check out the TV show of the Avengers. It's fantastic. It's really, really TV gold.
Exactly. So, because it has, what's the actress's name that plays Emma? I'm blanking on it right now, but
it escapes me too. I love that show, but I have COVID brain, as Zand would say.
Yeah. We've talked about COVID brain on our recent Ghostwood episode, as you heard. Yeah, she was Diana Rigg. Thank you. That's what.
There you go.
So Dame Diana Rigg, who was most recently on Game of Thrones, but this was back when she was young and really hot. And
she was gorgeous woman.
Smoking,
gorgeous.
she was back when she was Mrs. James Bond in On Her Majesty's Secret Service.
And she was a Bond girl.
Exactly. Well, she was a Bond wife. Not too many of those.
Nope.
That's right up there. That's the top of the echelon.
That's the next level after being a Bond girl, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, that's as high as it gets, really, to be, a wife that ends up getting killed by the end of the movie, but still technically a wife. They got married. Tracy Vincenzo Bond. And, Dinah Rigg, just great actress. And, she was, on that show as Emma Peel, paired up with John Steed, and they were just basically, she was kind of like the kung fu expert, and Steed was this very dapper gentleman who liked to fight with an umbrella at times. And it was just very quaint, very British spy show. Yeah. And I really loved that series. So here, to see it on Doom Patrol being homaged in this wonderful way with Vic and Rita, I thought was just outstanding.
Well, I think it's also perfect for the time period that Rita was an actress. You think she probably would have known known the Avengers, probably being, an actress during that period. So I think that was actually a very clever thing as well to give that as a reference, because obviously Rita, that's what Rita knows.
She knows this. She has that very 60s attitude, early 60s attitude that fit in perfectly with the Avengers.
So it would stand to reason that she would use that as a reference when it came to this fantasy that she has.
Yeah, and it kind of gives you a little insight into her imagination, which is interesting. So now I want to see more. I want to see full episodes of this. I don't just want to see little homages. But
no, these guys know how to tease you with these spin-off shows.
Yeah, exactly. So. If we get to Steel and Stone, if you want to pair that up with a Beekeeper and Borg spin-off series, I would not be object to that either.
That would be fantastic. Maybe for an April Fool's Day episode, they could maybe do that,
Well,
back to back.
Got to help fill in the gap between Doom Patrol seasons somehow, I would think.
Exactly.
Right?
You have your answer.
Thank you. See how I'm thinking here. I'm using my brain. I'm trying to come up with solutions to all this crisis that we're in. So we have Rita and Vic. Essentially, we see Rita going to a lab and finding Vic studying a computer, and she shows him about the newspaper about the masked beekeeper and talks about it being her, and then he jokes with her about, well, hey, we have to come up with all this bee-themed stuff for your life as a superhero, like you need a jet called the Stinger and other things, and she realizes he's joking, but and that's where we kind of dive right into the fantasy sequence a little bit. But he tells her to take it slow, that she's getting a little ahead of herself with this whole superhero thing, but also that Vic is kind of preoccupied at the moment. He's got Ronnie on the brain.
That he does.
He's got Ronnie brain. That's opposed. We've got COVID brain. He's got Ronnie brain. And basically talking about how, well, we'll talk about this later. And they end up going to this murder scene where Rita shows up in a beekeeper costume. Vic tells her to kind of just stay there. Let me go talk to the FBI agents.
Yeah.
And
I love that.
Yeah. So what did you make of that scene where essentially Vic ghosts Rita right there at the murder scene and takes off without her, leaving her there?
Well, I mean, because I can't blame him to a certain degree, because it's like, we got to get this done. We got to get this done. Because he obviously joins the dots immediately, and he knows what's going on. So maybe it's just the fact of, I don't have time to chit-chat, I have to go. And so he flies off without her. Granted, okay, it was a bit of a dick move, possibly, but...
it was a Vic move.
It was a Vic move, yeah.
V-I-C-K, how's that?
Yeah, and he just... and he just flew off, because I suppose, like we said, he has Ronnie brain, so he probably... is not, cool, calm, and collected as he might often be. And so he's like, yeah, screw this, I've got to go. And so he flies off without her. I feel kind of bad for Rita, because she's trying to embrace this new craze that she's got, if we can call it a craze or a phase, either way. And actually, Charles, I had mentioned this beekeeper character that I had kind of teased about, and I actually went back to reread the article, and I didn't share it for this reason, because the article says... the character is actually Swarm, is a character known as Swarm, who is a beekeeper. Okay. And this journalist basically made the comparison between the beekeeper and Swarm, saying maybe, because he was also kind of giving a hypothesis of his own, that they might be drawing from the character of Swarm from DC Comics. So I just wanted to clear that up a little bit with our listeners in case they were wondering, about that.
Now I'm wondering who DC Comics Swarm is.
Swarm is a thing. That he is. I mean, and he basically, by day, he's a beekeeper apparently, and then he goes by the superhero name Swarm apparently. So that's who they were drawing from.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, and so they think that might be the impetus for the character of the beekeeper.
Okay.
But outside of that, I mean, I feel bad for Rita because and also there was also a nice review of the play as well, and it seems like it went all right. So there was that. But yeah, it's other than that, I just kind of it was a bit of a Vic move, and I felt kind of bad for it.
You like me calling it a Vic
I
move.
do. I'm adopting that term from now on.
VICK, yeah, Vic move. Now they show up. They basically where Vic was headed was to the sub shop where Roni, I guess, had agreed to meet him, and she's sitting there, and he tells her that she's not a murderer, and presuming that apparently she's the one who killed that guy.
Yeah, he was one of the chaps who was responsible for her
Condition, yeah.
Yeah.
And so he tries to reason with her, and he asks her if she's going to kill again. And Roni says, well, I'm going to do what I have to do. And so that's obviously not a good sign. So, he tries to say that their relationship meant something. And she walks away from him. Vic goes after her, grabs her arm, not going to let her leave. And at that moment, all of our fears come true, where she throws him across the room and comes over and beats on him. And Vic turns his arm into a sonic cannon and aims it at her, ready to fire, but he doesn't. And then she turns and walks out. Yeah. He doesn't go after her. Rita shows up at that particular moment.
In full beekeeper getup.
In full beekeeper getup, yes. And intending to stop her, but she freezes. And Roni just blows right past her. Kind of essentially like almost like this was Rita's Uncle Ben moment. Or, the robber, Spider-Man's, the murderer of Uncle Ben. That, where the whole great power, with great power comes great responsibility comes from. Because, hey, if Rita had stopped Roni, maybe somebody else won't be dead later. But she doesn't.
Just saying.
So that could come back to bite her very hard, very soon. So what did you make of that moment?
Well, yeah, because, Rita's been going on and on about wanting to be a superhero and fantasizing about it. She gets her opportunity, and what does she do? She freezes. And so you think to yourself, I mean, because it's no longer performance anxiety, I think, because she's gotten over that.
Yeah.
So it's either she doesn't want to get involved because she says, I know how much Vic cares about this woman, and I don't want to do anything
to hurt.
So that. It could be that. It could be that. It could be that maybe she's just like, I don't want to get anywhere near this. So she kind of maybe tenses up for that reason. But yeah, as you said, these actions could definitely have consequences. And but it's so sad once again, because I think Vic really had was kind of putting his money on this relationship, if you will, and I think he really had a good thing going. But yeah, it just didn't turn out the way it was supposed to. I felt really bad for him, and I think, and Rita, we know that Rita already has a failures complex. If this action has consequences, what's it going to do to her psyche? Because already she was going on about kind of crying the blues, saying, I'm such a failure. I screwed up here. I screwed up there, etc.
Her self-esteem issues, yeah.
Yeah, and this is going to be the nth time that she screws up, in inverted commas. So,
and especially what happens if Roni does, like I said, goes out and murders somebody.
It's on her.
It's on her after Rita could have stopped her.
Totally. It's on her. And it's like, wow. Actually, going back to the thing, who kept the Uma jelly once it was found? I mean, is the FBI holding on to that?
That's a great question, because while there, Vic had noticed that, and I forgot to mention that, but that's what tipped him off that, hey, there was only 4 people that had access to that Uma jelly, and I know it wasn't me, I know it wasn't Rita, and no, it wasn't probably Larry, so that leaves Roni, and so he knew who the murderer was.
Yeah. And now the FBI has it, so I don't know, is the smoking man going to take it and put it in a box in some place and close the box, that scene?
Well, it's interesting that you bring up the smoking man at this particular time, considering, well, hey, we talked some X-Files on Ghostwood.
Yeah.
Yeah, and with a certain DJ Nick making comparisons to himself as the smoking man.
Yes.
For obvious reasons.
Yeah, of course. No, so I just think of myself, because the FBI now has that Uma jelly, apparently. So, and I don't know, is the FBI connected to the Bureau of Normalcy in any capacity?
We don't know.
Yeah, because now that Uma jelly is dangerous stuff, so...
Unless Star Labs gets their hands on it, and then Silas gets a hold of it. I don't know.
I mean, I don't know if they'll even pursue that, but we know that now the Uma jelly is in the hands of the authorities. So
we don't know how much was left after Roni used it too.
True, yeah, because we just see the kind of glowing jar, but we don't know how much is in it actually. As you say,
I don't know. I think that's something that should be addressed. I don't know if it will. We'll have to wait and see on that one, I think.
This is why you and I.
That is a great observation, sir. I will give you points for that.
Well, thank you. But you know what? Thank you. But you know what? You and I, having read so many comics and knowing all this stuff, it's the little things that sometimes then crop up later. So
yeah, or
I wonder.
Or it's just something there hanging that maybe another writer will pick up on. We'll see.
I hope so.
We'll see. All right. Anything else before we move on?
No. When it comes to I was just sort of kind of heartbroken for Vic. I mean, while Cliff was enjoying, this moment of elation, Vic has this kind of come down on him, so I felt kind of bad. And I wonder how Rita's then going to explain to Vic, I'm sorry I froze up. They're going to have that conversation.
Yeah, we talked about, over the course of talking season 2, how we were worried that Vic was going to get burned by Roni, especially once I made that comparison to Roni Evers, the comic book counterpart, that had been a friend to Vic and then ultimately betrayed him. So I kind of wondered if something similar would have happened with this female version, Roni Evers.
And lo and behold, you were right. But it seems like she's going after her, as Magneto would say in First Class, I'm Frankenstein's monster, I'm looking for my creator.
Right.
And then maybe she's going on that same path of just wanting to avenge.
Yeah.
But still, that doesn't justify it. You can't just murder people.
I was going to say, she's murdering people, so she's going to have to answer for that, presumably. Yeah. And Vic being the hero that he is, early on, she made that question when they were, if you remember, they were confronted by that robber and that mugger, and Roni said that Vic had the choice, well, you could just let this criminal go. So now, presumably, Vic will have to make the choice of whether he lets Roni go.
Right. And also, it goes against, almost Roni's creed, because she's like, you shouldn't judge people on the last thing they've done. She's kind of going against her own life lessons, if you will.
Well, I'm sure, it all, whatever suits her particular mood at a particular time, I guess.
It's all right.
Her own self-interest, I guess.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Topic number 5. Let's talk about the Chief, Dorothy, the Candlemaker, and a certain Willoughby Kipling.
Yeah.
And who gets a little moment with the Knights Templar.
I was so happy we got to see the Knights Templar at last.
Yeah, so there's basically, we might as well talk about it just really quickly, because we get to see them questioning a guinea pig that's kind of inside a pentagram.
Yeah.
And the guinea pigs say that there are whispers of a cataclysmic event coming. The knights whisper among themselves, and so I thought that was pretty good. So
yeah. It was great. It was great. I was just hoping that Azrael might have made an appearance, but we can't have everything.
No. Maybe he'll get his own HBO Max series. Who knows?
I hope so.
Yeah, because I know you're a big Azrael fan.
I love Azrael. Yeah, big fan.
But I'm guessing this is a different sect of the Knights Templar. I'm guessing. This is the Doom Patrol version. So
yeah, exactly. It's not the Order of Saint Dumas from
No. This is not the Order of Saint Dumas. This is the the Knights Templar that interrogate guinea pigs in pentagrams. So
yeah.
So take that for what you will. All right. So we pick up with Niles and Dorothy, who are apparently out for a little daddy-daughter day.
Yeah.
And they stop off at a convenience store / food mart / gas station. And the chief is refusing to tell Dorothy where they're going. All he wants to do is, it's a surprise for her. And so he sends her in for some chocolate bars, which is a nice nod to the comics, because the chief in the comics, at least in Grant Morrison's run, is a serious chocoholic.
Dark chocolate? Does he explain that he loves dark chocolate?
He is addicted to it, literally.
Wow.
So, yeah. People do cocaine. Essentially, that's what the chief does with chocolate bars. He's pretty into it. So, but he's offering to basically do whatever she wants. So Dorothy goes in while the chief's pumping the gas, and Niles gets a call from Kipling on a candy bar phone, of all things.
Yeah. It looks like a Reese's Pieces kind of thing.
Pretty much. Yeah, he kind of breaks it apart and holds it up to his ears and his mouth, and so Kipling tells him that he's got the tribal curse under control. He wonders if Niles has, quote, lost the plot. And Niles insists that he's got everything under control, but he warns that the prehistoric creature will rip them to shreds if Dorothy gets any older, matures. And Kipling wants to move up their plans, but Niles just wants to put off just a little while longer so he can have time to say goodbye to his daughter, which is understandable.
Totally.
Because we know that he does care about Dorothy, even if he goes about it as a really bad way sometimes.
Yeah, misguided, I guess we could say.
But Kipling is just like, okay, let's just take her off the board now. He doesn't care about her at all, I don't think.
I mean, because he looks at it almost as in a cold, surgical way, as, she's a threat, get rid of her, kind of thing. And he doesn't, because he doesn't have the attachment that Niles has. So it's kind of easy for him to say, I suppose.
Pretty much, yeah, say. Exactly. Now, Dorothy goes inside and has a very traumatic moment for a young girl, an ordinary young girl, because she gets her first period. She menstruates for the first time. And thankfully, though, she had a very considerate female clerk helping her with that. But essentially, this is revealing that Dorothy is getting older, maturing. Yep. And so that clock, that very dangerous ticking clock is happening here. So thankfully, with the help of the clerk, Dorothy is able to address her needs as needed without going into details about that. Goes back out, having changed out of her dress into pants.
Yeah.
The chief apparently not noticing this.
Well, he does, but she's very clever at deflecting. He's like, "Oh, here's your chocolate." He's like, "Weren't you wearing?" He's like, "Here's your chocolate." And he's like, good, clever, Dorothy.
Yeah, well, get him fix it. Like I said, he's addicted. So you get him kind of dangling those shiny keys in the middle and distracting him. So he basically says, whatever she wants to do. So she sees a sign for an amusement park, for a carnival going on, a street fair. And so she wants to do that. So that's what they're going to do. And so they go to this carnival, and it basically you get little bits of Dorothy having a very nice time with her father, but Niles is having some problems in the process. So what did you make of that whole carnival sequence?
Well, I thought it was curious that we started the season in a carnival of sorts, because that's where Dorothy was. She was kind of imprisoned in this sideshow, and I thought it was a curious choice on her part. She would want to go back to a carnival to have fun, Granted, first time she was kind of imprisoned, here she's a free person, but I thought it was curious that it's come full circle. It started in a carnival. It's going to end in a carnival because obviously this is the penultimate episode before our finale. So,
yes.
But yeah, it was lovely to see Niles so fatherly and so wonderful to her. But at the same time, it's kind of like the prisoner's last meal because he knows that they're coming towards the end of their relationship. And so obviously he wants it to be as painless as possible. I appreciate that. But it's like he even says, I don't know whether he says or she says, we should have done this sooner. I'm thinking it might have been Niles, who maybe is kind of regretting the fact of saying we should have done this kind of stuff sooner.
I think it was. I think you're absolutely right about that.
So
he does seem very regretful throughout this whole thing and guilty and I think it upsets him that he wasted so much of his time with Dorothy, and now here at the end he has so much little time left that I think he's especially considering that I think he knows he's dying on top of it. So he feels this is it, and I think he's regretting a lot of it, of what he didn't do.
He is, and I think, as I said, the problem is just that it is kind of a prisoner's last meal, and that's why I enjoyed it, but at the same time I was like, you're kind of just softening the blow for her at this point. So it was great to see them so happy, but it's like you should have done this way, way sooner than that. And you shouldn't, it's like you waited till it got to this point to give her Dorothy Day. So it did seem a little late for that, though I did appreciate the time they had together for sure.
I guess it's a better late than never thing, maybe, but
totally, yeah. But I did actually have a question for you,
sure.
Charles. I don't not to enter into too much detail when it came to obviously Dorothy having her period, but how in the world did the shopkeeper know she was having a period? Because she just goes into the bathroom and knows she's in the bathroom, and that's pretty much it.
Well, she did look under the stall. And
she so she did see the blood.
The bloody underwear, I think. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So, I was like, wow, she's like, I don't know, just one clever shopkeeper there.
Yeah. Well, I think maybe at first she thought she was shoplifting, so she followed her into the bathroom and then saw her underwear and then realized what was really going on. I'm guessing.
I'll take that. I'll take that for sure. Yeah. But then jumping forward.
But at least she was nice about it. Like it wasn't. Something like that is very traumatic to a young girl. So, especially someone like Dorothy, who had never, is so kept in isolation about such things, in ignorance about such things. So,
she was incredibly sweet, and the fact that even Dorothy wants to kind of pay for everything. She's like, no, us girls have to look out for each other.
Right.
I thought that was very, very sweet. That there are decent people in this world.
Yeah, but she also does make the very ominous comment that, well, it's just a sign that you're growing up.
Yeah.
Which, as we know, is a very bad thing in Dorothy's case.
And then it carries on to the fact of some daddies just don't want to see their little girls grow up. And we know how much Niles does not want his little girl to grow up.
Exactly. He's afraid of it because that means the Candlemaker will be emerging. So Dorothy, during the course of the day, she ends up having visions of Slava, her mother, who shows up at various points. Dorothy ends up running into a fun house.
Yeah.
And Dorothy goes in there and then ends up finding herself in the Yukon forest. And Slava appears as, like Dorothy's in this circle of stones. Her mother gives her this fur robe and a staff. And she wonders why her mother's there. But Slava tells her she's not ready and disappears. Yeah. And at that moment, the Candlemaker shows up. And I'm sure, as we talked in various episodes, once Nick sees the Candlemaker, things are about to get real, right?
I am always overjoyed. This time, I didn't have to drop my knife and fork because I wasn't eating at the time.
Yeah.
But I was so happy to see it. And I actually want to point out the red boots she gets. I wonder where that's a homage to Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz and the ruby slippers.
Oh, it is, because if you notice, Dorothy's dress is very an homage to Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, because
the blue and white dress.
Yes,
Yeah,
correct. Yes.
yeah, and so and that was straight from the comics because when she was introduced, she was essentially like an ape-faced girl version of Dorothy from the Wizard of Oz. That was a direct connotation.
And
So
also, I think the name Spinner, like the
yes, like
twister
the
that
Twister,
takes Dorothy to
exactly,
Oz.
exactly. So that was intentional. So they just
I
kind of
just love
they just
seeing
kind of
it.
continued on that theme.
Yeah, I love to seeing the ruby boots in this case, or wellies as they would call them in the UK.
Right.
It was great. Yeah, just
Yeah.
wanted to point that out for
No,
sure because
no.
I love the Wizard of Oz and I'm a huge Judy Garland fan, so I
Yeah,
was very happy to see
it's
that.
a great movie, great classic movie. That'd be a fun one to talk about on certain podcast. Just saying.
Yes, definitely.
Just not it didn't win the Oscar, so but
No, but somebody's going to have to be mentioning it. That someone is me for sure.
yeah, exactly. Just pointing that out there. So Dorothy runs out of the fun house. Niles is struggling at this point. He's coughing. She asks if he's okay. He says he is, but Dorothy tells him they should go home. Niles says he wants to find one last ride that they can do together. Yeah. And so they end up going to the the sun's setting, so they go on the Ferris wheel. And it stops at the top, of course. And Niles says it's a good place to get a new perspective once in a while. And Dorothy's talking about, like, well, what happens if I grow up? And Niles starts to answer her, but then starts choking.
Yeah.
And he assures Dorothy that she'll never have to worry about him. She's this wonderful, sweet girl, and nothing will ever change that. And Dorothy tells him that this is like the best day ever. And this is where Niles wishes that he had done it sooner. This is where he starts having that regret.
And when people say this was the best day ever, things are going to go to hell very quickly.
Exactly. And sure enough, because, hey, it's Doom Patrol, and then, hey, it's the penultimate episode, they do. Because once they get back to the ground, Niles sends Dorothy off to get 2 extra large lollipops. And once she leaves, Willoughby shows up and tells Niles that, hey, it's time, baby. And time to kill your daughter. Niles admits that I can't do that. And Willoughby says, well, that's why I'm here. Because I know you couldn't do it. So they have no other options. Niles starts falling out of his chair at this point. He's coughing on he's just lying down on his chest, coughing, wheezing, struggling. Willoughby helps him back up, and then we see a clown statue start to melt in a pool of blood and wax. So you know what that means.
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun. So Willoughby tells Niles at this moment that Dorothy has apparently grown up, which Niles should have figured out by now. Maybe he did and just didn't say. And looks like they missed their chance to kill her. So the Candlemaker is coming whether they like it or not. To paraphrase a certain Colin Baker.
I saw what you did there. I'm sure the Whovian listeners out there really appreciated that too as much as I did, Charles.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So Dorothy sees her lollipops melting like wax. People start screaming. The Candlemaker is right in her head saying, "It's time, Dorothy, it's time. And you can't run." So, not looking good for Team Doom Patrol, Team Niles and Dorothy. So what did you make of that big cliffhanger?
I was like, it has to be another week before we get the resolution to this. Are you serious?
Right.
When the credits started rolling, we're like, you can't do this to me.
It's
a week
no.
is like,
yeah.
Yeah, I almost imagine kind of the song "The Waiting Is the Hardest Part" playing in with the credits.
But the waiting is the hardest part. Yeah.
I love that song. But I loved it. I mean, it was such a tense ending, and finally seeing the Candlemaker come into his own, you think to yourself, what's going to happen now that he is in the fully in the
real
world.
world, yeah.
You know, because you see people running around, like you said, and screaming and stuff. So it's like he's come into his own. So you think to yourself, what's Willoughby going to do? How are they going to counteract this? Because even Willoughby is not exactly certain that they can even beat this guy. Well,
their whole plan was essentially hinging on the fact that, well, we can kill Dorothy before the Candlemaker gets here.
Exactly.
Before she grows up. Well, they missed their window of opportunity now. Now he's here. What are you going to do about it? And as we find out, not a whole lot.
Yeah, correct. Not a whole lot.
And I'll just leave it there for now. But that doesn't look good. So this is, we've got the Candlemaker who used Dorothy to get into the real world, the really real world. There ain't no coming back. And now it's time to party with the Candlemaker.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's right.
The candles are officially lit.
Yeah, it'll all come to a head in Wax Patrol.
Exactly. And we'll talk about that more next week. So,
certainly.
But for right now, anything else about this episode before we move on? I know we're running long, but
no,
lots to talk about.
We did. I mean, I think it was a perfect appetizer to the finale, ostensibly the season finale, which will be Wax Patrol. And it really has you wanting to see what happens because, of course, it ends on such a strong cliffhanger once again. And, I was very happy with Cliff. I was sad for Vic. This season is just, I know I sound like a broken record, but this season is just so fantastic. And I'm just loving it to bits. And it breaks my heart to think that, that the next episode is the last one for the season, and Lord knows when we'll get the next one.
I know. I've been having so much fun talking Doom Patrol with you, and I hate to think we only got one more episode left after this. So,
I know.
I'm getting a little sad. But for now, favorite quotes. Do you have any favorite quotes from this episode?
I did have a couple. I mean, there was the one... Here it's more on the sadder side compared to the fun side, because, the exchange between Larry and Paul, Larry saying, I know a lot of people look at this stuff like it's magic, but I see it as something more powerful. And Paul's like, what? Math. Numbers never make mistakes. Or do they, I should add. And then...
well, they do if you get your sums wrong, just saying.
We forgot to carry the one. Naughty. And then also Cliff to his daughter, I really like this one as well. It's like, okay, here's the deal. If you're pissed as hell and you want to run, stay. So that was great.
That was a good line.
And then the other one from Miranda to Jane, I believe it was, is, I know doom and gloom is kind of your whole vibe, but it's a little tragic when you can't see hope staring you right in the face.
Yes, that was a great quote. I like Cliff going to Clara, going, whoa, are you okay? Because I delivered some babies in these hollowed halls. Granted, they were bald rats the size of jelly beans, but it's all a circle of life and Hakuna Matata shit. So if you're going to pop, I got you. So I like that a lot.
I love that.
Let's see. Larry saying, space isn't such a scary place. It's quiet, filled with possibility, and it's up to people like me to show our world just how beautiful it can be.
Oh, nice.
Thought that was touching. And Willoughby Kipling to the chief, where Willoughby says, what's the difference between now and later? And talking about, of course, when they kill Dorothy. And the chief replies, the difference is that I get to say goodbye to my daughter. So
that's a nice one, too.
So that's a good, I thought that was good that, because it shows that the chief actually does have feelings for Dorothy. I know we've talked about how he's been a horrible father at times, but he does care about her. He
does, sure.
He just goes about it a really ass-backwards way sometimes.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah, all right. But good intentions, I guess.
Yeah.
Even though the road to hell is paved with them.
Yeah.
All right.
You said it.
What's your rating, sir?
I'm going to give this an 8.5 out of 10 melting lollipops.
Nice. Well, in honor of the Knights Templar, I'm going to give this one, we're in sync. I'm giving it 8.5 as well. I'm giving 8.5 out of 10 guinea pigs in a pentagram.
Oh, and that's nice. I like it.
So I just thought that was a great little scene.
Oh, it was. It was.
A lot of fun. So we do have some feedback from Holly.
Ooh.
Once again,
Yay.
yeah, Holly from Wisconsin writing in. Always great to hear from Holly from the Five-ish Fangirls podcast. And once again, always recommend the Five-ish Fangirls podcast.
Indeed, folks, check them out there. Awesome.
When you're done listening to our nonsense, go over there and check out the Five-ish Fangirls. So Holly writes in about Dad Patrol saying, "Hey, Charles and Nick, this was an interesting episode. Cliff talking with his daughter and giving her a pep talk was what I think they both needed. Jane asking Larry to help with Kay. Loved the little Avengers nod that Rita and Cyborg cooked up. Well, it was mainly Rita, but still good. We get a glimpse of the good father that Larry could be with a flashback of his son interviewing him, and they're looking at the stars. Dorothy's storyline this episode seems to be the start of the main upcoming action with the way the episode ended. Do not trust Miranda one bit after what happened with Jane at the end of the episode and what Jane discovered. Sure, the girls moved on, but I think they had help." So I'll wrap it up here, Holly from Wisconsin. So, yeah, I wouldn't trust Miranda as far as I could throw her. So that's not very
No, I agreed. Always great hearing from you, Holly. We really appreciate your feedback.
Yes, thank you so much for writing in. You've been so good about writing in all season. So you're kind of like one of our unsung heroes here at Titan Talk, the Titans podcast.
I mean, that's dedication. We really appreciate that for sure.
We do. And always brightens our day, I think. So if you want to be like Holly, because we have this big finale coming up, you might want to write in about it.
Yeah.
So write to us at titantalkcast@gmail.com. That's titantalkcast@gmail.com. Or you can reach out to us on Twitter at Titan Talk Cast on Twitter, or Facebook, Titan Talk, the Titans Podcast. We would love to hear from you. Love to read your emails. Love to hear your thoughts. Any thoughts about how Nick and I have been doing this season? Any thoughts about maybe what we could talk about afterwards? Who knows? But always love to hear the feedback from everybody, and hope you guys are enjoying our particular discussions. Nick, how about you? Where can they reach you?
Well, when it comes to me, for you country music lovers, I do host the Whiskey and Cigarettes show where we play traditional country, today's country, and everything else in between. For more information about that and where to tune in, you can visit our website. That's whiskeyandcigarettesshow.com. When it comes to podcast land, when I am not around, having great time with Charles here in Doom Manor and on Titan Talk, if superhero movies are your speed, you can find me hosting the Happiness and Darkness podcast, where we discuss superhero movies from all the big companies, be it Marvel, DC, Dark Horse, Image, or more. If you'd like to join me on there and discuss a superhero movie of your choice, feel free to send me an email at happinessanddarknesshow@gmail.com, and we'll supply you with a list of films left to cover. We also on social media, so Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all those for sure. And also our latest project, Gold Standard, the Oscars movie podcast, where with mutual friends Zan Sprouse and Rachel Friend, we're reviewing all the movies that won the Oscar for Best Picture in chronological order from 1927's Wings to the present day. Thursday, August the 20th, we'll be discussing the sixth film to win Best Picture, which will be Cavalcade. And if any of you fine folks out there want to join us for that discussion, you can send us an email at goldstandardoscars@gmail.com, or even just your feedback. That's always goldstandardoscars@gmail.com. We always appreciate the follow and support on Twitter and Facebook. And that I think, pretty much wraps it up. What about you, Charles, aside from making me kind of split my sides?
Yeah, I apologize to Nick, because I was throwing him off his game a little bit by holding up my John Constantine Funko figure. So, but I just couldn't resist. I was feeling a little mischievous there. But
I loved it. But yeah, when it comes to your adventures on the interwebs, Charles, where can folks find you?
Yeah, if you want to check out the rest of my nonsense, you can reach me at Charles Skaggs on the Twitter machine, or at Charles Skaggs on the Instagrams. Or Facebook, of course, Charles Skaggs in Hilliard, Ohio, and my blog, Geeky Things.
Damn good coffee. And hot.
Damn good coffee and hot. Where I talk about all the stuff we talk about here on Titan Talk, including your Titans news, Doom Patrol news of comic book TV shows, hopefully some news coming out of DC Fandom this weekend. Yep. Definitely hoping for some Titans and Doom Patrol news that we could share here on Titan Talk next time. Definitely want to stay tuned for that. And then news of my other podcasts they do for Southgate Media, including, of course, the Phantom Zone podcast they do with Jesse Jackson, where we just finished up Stargirl Season 1. We have we just did the Season 1 finale, so that's out now. And now it looks like we may be talking Lucifer Season 5 next.
Ooh, interesting.
If you're a fan of Lucifer, it's a great show. Highly recommended. Now currently on Netflix. It was on Fox, but now on Netflix. And then Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast that I do with Jesse Jackson as well, but also assorted special guest companions, including a certain DJ Nick, who's always wonderful when he's on, and will be on again soon. Just putting that out there. As we get ever closer to our mysterious episode 200, I'm not going to talk about that just yet. Got to wait for it. And then lastly, of course, Ghost with the Twin Peaks podcast. They do with Zan Sprouse, Nick's co-host on Gold Standard, the Oscars podcast, where we talk all things Twin Peaks, David Lynch, and currently just recently started the first of what is going to be 6 episodes as we go back to the classic sci-fi series, The X-Files, starring, of course, David Duchovny, who is a Twin Peaks actor, and Gillian Anderson as Special Agents Fox Mulder and Dana Scully. And we'll be exploring various Twin Peaks-related actors that have appeared on The X-Files. So we're picking an assortment of 6 episodes that'll be pretty interesting to talk about, including some classics like Humbug and Beyond the Sea. We're going to be talking about that next. So lots of good stuff coming up. So I hope everybody checks that out.
I would definitely, I would say, folks, if you're not checking those podcasts out, woe betide you, because they're fantastic, fantastic podcasts.
We try our best, we just do our little show and hope everybody likes it. So, but of course, Zan's just always entertaining to listen to, if nothing else. So, if not for me, check it out for her. Okay, she's great. She's fantastic. So, everybody, thank you so much for listening to us. I know we ran long, but we had a lot to talk about, and we just had a lot of fun. At least I did talking this Doom Patrol episode. So, next time on Titan Talk, here at episode 59, we've reached the finale, and we'll be talking Wax Patrol, the Doom Patrol Season 2 finale, and this will, we're coming to the end of our particular Odyssey, Nick, so hope you're ready to wrap things up next week.
I will do my best. It's going to be tough, but I'm going to do my best. And once again, I'm so regretting the fact that it was a truncated season, because it would have been 10 episodes and not 9, but, those are the breaks, as it were.
Yeah, sadly, life is what happens when the COVID-19 has other plans, apparently. Yeah. And sadly, Doom Patrol fell victim to this as well, having lost an episode, because, a lot of fans were disappointed that, hey, we were only going to get 10 episodes, and then we lose another one on top of it. So, a little disappointing, but hopefully we'll make up that episode in a Season 3, which, fingers crossed, hopefully is going to get announced at least in this weekend at DC Fandom. So everybody keep your fingers crossed and hope for that Season 3 announcement. I know I am, because I want some more Doom Patrol.
You and me both, Charles. You and me both.
All right. So everybody, thanks again for listening. Come on back. Episode 59, Wax Patrol, Doom Patrol Season 2 finale. I don't think I have to talk more about it. So everybody, thanks again, and we'll see you next time right here on Titan Talk, the Titans podcast. Goodbye, everybody.
Ciao.